Now, he is to rock as Larry Gogan is to pop. He's the expert's expert. He's the critic's critic. He's the man who launched the career of U2. Will you welcome, please, Dave Fanning? No surprises for you tonight, Dave. Yeah, you can get rid of that. You were stunned last night.
Stunned? Who used to say that? Was that Dermot Morgan and Mike Murphy?
Mike Murphy is stunned.
That's right, yeah, I was stunned.
You looked bewildered.
I was bewildered, yeah. Because even what people can hear at home, or what people could hear out in the audience, I couldn't hear a thing, because I was just backstage talking to a guy. I knew I was there to do something. I saw Freddie Middleton going up. I said, okay, I'm not doing this one, it must be the one after that. And then somebody said, you're on. I said, well, what am I doing? What's the band? No, it's you. It's me. I didn't know a thing.
You're so modest and bashful.
No, this is just
You've
true.
got hundreds of awards, haven't you?
Well, I don't know about hundreds. I've had a few in my day,
yeah. How did you get into the business?
How did I get into the business? Well, I think one of the most important things would be that being the youngest of six means that, you know, anybody who isn't the youngest of six wouldn't understand what it means being the youngest of six. But the influences in terms of what they were all into, I took on from the age of, say, 3 and 4. For instance, not realising I would have known, say, the first 6 Bob Dylan albums without ever having listened to them myself, because I would have been putting on my own pop music, say. When I got into Bob Dylan later, I realised I knew every single thing backwards. So I was in a magazine, sort of hanging around, I think called Scene magazine, and we did an article on one of the pirate stations. Anyway, reciprocal deal meant that I had a programme on the radio, and they had a free ad in our magazine. And then Radio 2 started in '79, and that's it.
And that was it, yeah. Now, you've a whole pile of things to your credit, but you're intimates with the great. I mean, you're an intimate of Sinead O'Connor's, and that's you're an intimate of Bono's and all that, aren't you?
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, some people seem to think, oh, because you know Bono very well, you're obviously down the pub with him every night. I don't see Bono, and I see him now and again, maybe, you know, but I wouldn't say an intimate. It depends on what you mean by intimate.
What about Sinead and all the fuss this morning? I mean, whatever she said, and whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, she's on the front pages.
Yeah, that's a point. There's another point to it as well, and that is that I do think that an awful lot of rock music has lost its edge. For instance, years ago, pop music or rock music was music that parents didn't like, the kids did like, and you had something that was, say, of your own generation. If Michael Jackson's Thriller album sold 40 million copies, as many grannies would have bought that in Woolworths, sort of, or in the sort of normal shop where you buy sweets, as opposed to years ago of going into your little sort of head record shop to pick out your own music that you and your generation wanted. So I don't mind if there's something there that just annoys the older generation in some ways. We could certainly do it a bit more of that in rock music.
Yeah, I remember reading an interview that you gave, and you referred to an interview that I did with BP Fallon.
Oh, yeah.
And I asked BP Fallon, like, when are you going to grow up,
yeah,
BP?
That's right.
And the audience all cheered, hooray, you know, BP Fallon, when are you going to grow up? Good question, tough question. And I think you said something like, well, I looked at Pat and I looked at BP and I decided I didn't want to grow up.
I didn't say that.
I didn't want to grow up.
I didn't say that. First of all, the question was a completely legitimate question, because BP had been going on about the wild rock and roll lifestyle that he had led, of throwing televisions out windows and things like that, which is what was done in those days sometimes. But it was just the audience were so pleased to sort of see that this question is asked, and that they were also 25, 26, 27 years of age, looking 75, 76, 77 years of age. There was this guy much older, and he has a much younger spirit, a much younger heart, a much better outlook on life. And I just thought Beep was right.
There was a lot of talk about Phil Collins and Eric Clapton and how they were wearing Gianni Versace suits, and like it was rock for the middle age. I mean, are you ever too old to rock and roll?
That is a question. I mean, I went to see Eric Clapton, and on one level, some of his playing was great, and I really enjoyed it. But what exactly am I going to see at the Point Depot if I go and see Eric Clapton in 1991? I mean, I remember Eric Clapton in his denim jacket on the front cover reading the Beano or whatever it was of the John Mayall Blues Breakers album. I remember him back in those days in Cream and Blind Faith. So am I going to see that sort of stuff being relived, or am I going to allow him to grow up gracefully, if you like? And like, a lot of the songs that he played that night were from the last 2 albums, which are incidentally his 2 biggest selling albums. 2 albums that mean nothing to me. I don't give a hoot about Eric Clapton in some ways now. But I respect him for what he wants to do, but just don't let me have to watch him every night of the week.
Do you like everything you play?
On the radio?
Yeah. Yeah,
that's an amazing thing. I met somebody once who actually said to me, they fair play to you every night, like playing that stuff. You know, it must be very difficult. I mean, every single thing I play, I have never once been told what to play on the radio. I do exactly what I want to do, so obviously I play what I like.
But do you play, I know, some of the stuff is brutal now, really.
Some of the stuff is brutal?
Yeah, it's really brutal, and I think you play it just to...
This is completely untrue.
To go through the whole spectrum.
Well, it depends. For instance, if you just hear a piece of music and think that piece of music should be able to stand up on its own, or for instance, if I remember one time Van Morrison was on television once, and my father and my brother were watching it, and Van was going, baby, baby. And he said baby about 21 times. My father was reading the paper and looked up and said, is there a doctor in the house for that poor man, you know?
Put him out of his pain.
And like my brother was going, just shut up. You know, this is Van. This is happening here. This is rock music. Like, to quote Bob Dylan, if you like, don't criticise what you don't understand, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, you can't take the image away from the whole thing either. I mean, like David Bowie's platforms were as important as his records at the time. It's the whole thing. If you don't get into the whole idea of the thing, and for instance, if I therefore play something on the radio that might seem like white noise to some people, it's not that way to me. It's a lot more than that.